And I was living in Milwaukee, Wisconsin at the time, and I was putting a necklace on her. And I remember she was all dressed up because there was going to be a party. And I remember thinking, wow, 50. That's really old, Mom. Like, I can't imagine being 50. And now that I am past 50, I'm like, bring it on. Like, we have so many resources at our fingertips. There's just so much to live for. And now I look at the next decade, 2 decades, whatever it's going to be for me, and think, wow, just there's so many things to do. So my story is, we touched a little bit that I've moved a lot. 11 moves, 27 years of marriage, 3 kids. I started my journey, ironically, in Indianapolis. And I worked for Topics newspapers for a while. I worked for the Indianapolis Register for a while, which I don't even think exists anymore, but it was a digital, not digital, it was a magazine. And I really wanted to set the world on fire as a journalist. We then got married my college sweetheart, and he was living in Bloomington, Indiana at the time. And we started this trajectory of moving about every 2 to 3 years. He worked for a pharmaceutical company. He was on this leadership track, kind of a lot of Gen Xer women born between 65 and 80. A lot of them decided to kind of put their careers on hold, and that's what I ended up doing. No regrets in doing that. I love doing it. We've traveled the world. We've lived in Germany. I raised the kids there, the kids' wonder years, honestly, for 6 years growing up. We lived in Germany. We lived in a little German village, and we did that. We've lived in Chicago. We've lived in Colorado. We've lived just all over the place. And during that time, women ask me, what was it like? Trying to reinvent yourself, trying to move to all of these places, and, walking into a PTA meeting or a meeting of new friends or a new committee you're joining, and you feel like you're wearing this big sash that says, talk to me, I'm new, I need a friend. Because especially, and I know James is on here, he might be the only male on here today, but, for women especially, but I know it's difficult for men too, friendships, that takes a lot to cultivate new friendships, to get outside of your comfort zone, to do all of that. So if we fast forward a little bit to about 6 months before I was turning 50, I kind of looked at my life where I was, and I said, wow, I think there's more for me to do. There's more for me to give. There's more for me to explore. And at that point in my life, I had lost both of my parents. I was living abroad in Germany when both of my parents passed away. Unfortunately, in my book, I write about it. Some of the stories that I share are around that. I didn't make it back in time for either of my parents. For those that might have lived internationally or traveled internationally, those flights never get delayed. And on both occasions for my parents, they were delayed. So I didn't make it back. So I'm living now back in the US. I'm going to be turning 50. My kids are grown. One in college, one just about to go to college. And I'm thinking, there's something more for me to do. I haven't lost my identity yet. Whereas, Amy's got more to do. So I sat down and decided to start this podcast called Fearlessly Facing 50. I called it that because I knew that, we needed to open the dialogue, especially as women, to talk about these things that we all, go through at any phase of life. We master the art of reinvention, multitasking. We, all of a sudden, we're needed differently from our kids. Maybe we're caring for our aging parents. All of these things are shifting. We're going through physical and emotional changes. And so I decided, after having all of these talks with my friends, I'm going to start this podcast. Never listened to a podcast in my life. I was a book on tape girl. I would go to the library, check out a book on tape. That's about what I did. And so this podcast world, because I did have a background in broadcasting and journalism, I thought, I can handle that part of it. But the technology part was a real struggle. And so 6 months before I turned 50, I put a little ad in the Facebook group of our local town and said, hey, is there anybody out there that knows how to start a podcast or has any idea of the equipment I need? Or, because for podcasting, there's not just a button you push. You actually have to learn it and you have to figure it out. So this nice young gentleman came over. He could be my kid, actually. And he said, Mrs. Schmidt, I'm going to teach you how to do this. And I said, oh, now please, let's just stop there. First of all, don't call me Mrs. Schmidt, call me Amy. And I want you to do this for me and certainly put the things in my Amazon cart, but I want to learn how to do this because part of being confident as a woman, as a man, anytime at this, when you're 50 years old or you're 40 years old or you're trying to learn something new, you want to really be hands-on and learn it. So I launched this podcast, Fearlessly Facing 50, and I'll share a story before I talk about my book about podcasting. If you haven't checked out podcasts, I highly recommend them because there's a million out there, believe it or not. It's just a really cool thing on all different topics. And mine is around midlife and really taking on the challenges of midlife with confidence. So I'd gone to the Genius Bar and they were afraid to see me coming anymore. They were like, oh, here she comes again. What more questions does she need on the Mac, So I'd be going there and I had everything ready. Like a lot of people, women and men, we think about this. We want everything aligned. We want everything perfect. We just want to wait until we're ready to launch. And then it's like, okay, all the I's are dotted, all the T's are crossed. I'm ready. I sit in my office, take a deep breath, and I start with my first podcast. And I'm killing it. I'm thinking, this is awesome. 20 minutes in, I'm like, oh, this is easy. I can do this. I can do this in my sleep. I didn't have a guest that week. I was just solo podcasting. I finished, took a deep breath, and I go, okay, well, I guess I better play it back. And I go to my, everything I had learned during my Apple classes and everything I had learned from John, this young guy that taught me, I forgot to push record. Completely forgot to push record. So think about that for a minute. There's so many times that all of a sudden self-doubt starts to creep in. It's like, Amy, are you kidding me? You're 50 years old. You just went ahead for 25 minutes, thought you killed it, thought you were just going to set the world on fire as a podcaster, and you didn't even remember to push record. You have no audio file. So there are a couple of things I could do right then. I could just sit back and just say, okay, forget it. You know what? I'm not good enough at this. This is not going to work. Who's going to listen to me anyway? Or I can just simply say, all right, it was a practice round. I'm going to recalibrate. We're going to do this again. And I think that's just my whole message today. And with my book, which I'll put up my cover, called Cannonball, is all about taking those risks. Women, men, it doesn't matter at any age. You don't even have to be a midlife woman. You don't have to be 50, 60. You can be 20. It's about becoming comfortable being uncomfortable. And I think that's one of the things that I really talk about in my book. If you don't mind, I kind of like to do this before I dig into Cannonball and what's in the book and my process for writing it. I would love everybody, because these Zoom things are, our new way of life. If you wouldn't mind just transporting yourself back in time for a moment and just closing your eyes. And I just want you to picture yourself on a beautiful summer day, just like it might be today. I'm in Wisconsin, you're in Indianapolis. It's a beautiful summer day, and just picture yourself as a kid, just being fearless. And, your mom or your dad is taking you to the public pool, and you're kicking off your flip-flops before you even get there because you're so excited to jump in that water. And you're so ready. It's that hot day, and you can't even get the sunscreen on, and you run to the end of the pool and you jump off. And you get out of the water and you say, Mom or Dad or friends, watch me. Watch me do it again. I'm going to go to the diving board and I'm going to jump off and make this splash. And can't you just picture yourself being this young, fearless, brave kid that doesn't matter who's watching you, what the splash looked like, how difficult it is to get yourself out of the pool, out of the ladder. None of that matters. You're fearless. You're brave. And now I just want you to transport yourself for a moment to where you are today, no matter what your circumstance, no matter what your story, wherever you are in your journey. But I want you to picture yourself today on a nice hot summer day, and you want to go to the pool, and you get to the pool and you're a little hesitant. You're thinking, oh man, I don't know. Is the swimsuit okay? Oh, did I forget something? Oh, should I just sit in the parking lot? I don't know if I'm going to have any friends there. Are they going to meet me there? Oh, do I have to get myself out of the ladder? You're just thinking about all these things. And so you end up going to this diving board, and there you are in your suit. You might not be wearing a bikini like you did when you were a kid, or this fashionable suit, but you got on your swimsuit and you're getting to that diving board and you're wanting to climb up to the top, but you get stopped at the third rung. And you say, I just don't think I can do it. People are going to be watching me. It's not going to look perfect. I just don't think I'm brave enough to do it. I don't want to take the risk anymore. So now open your eyes and come back to where we are today in this meeting and talking about it. And I wanted just to give you that visual because this is why I wrote the book Cannonball. The book Cannonball for me is all about transporting you to that point in your life, no matter where you are, no matter what age you are, and having the confidence to go from that third rung to that 10th rung or whatever rung it is on the high dive. And you get up there and you run to the end and you wrap your arms around your legs, and it's uncomfortable, it's ugly, you're probably going to have to go to the chiropractor, your suit may fall off your shoulder, James, maybe your bottoms, I mean, who knows, you know, you worry about all these things, but you jump off and you do this cannonball and you do it with confidence, and you're like, okay, you have that fearless spirit of being a kid, you know, and I think we lose that. If you guys agree with that, I don't know if anybody ever puts things in the chat box, but give me a little thumbs up, or I totally agree, or I can relate to that, because there's so many times that we get stopped. Fear sets in. We begin to get self-doubt. We think, oh man, I used to be able to do that. I used to be able to run 5 miles. Now I can only walk to the mailbox and back. I used to be able to do this, but I had a knee replacement, or I used to be able to do this. So we want to get over that. And that's what Cannonball, the book, is about. If you happen to get a copy, and I'm going to give a copy away today, I just want to show you the cover. If you can see that, that's me standing on top of a cliff, and it's on my 50th birthday, actually, and I'm in Jamaica. And I'm scared of heights. You'll read about it in the book. I'm definitely afraid of heights. I don't like them. I never have, but it's something I wanted to conquer. And had my swimsuit on, as you can see here. A lot of people will say, wow, I can't believe that you actually are on the cover of your book and you're wearing a swimsuit and like that's you. And I said, yeah, because that's what this book is about. It's about creating your cannonball moments and having confidence where you are in your life. So that's really what it's about. You know, I wrote this book. It's my first book. I wrote it because my mission with this book was to encourage people at any age to just get uncomfortable, to challenge themselves in new ways. One section of the book I write about, and I was going to read it, but I'd almost rather have you read it, to be honest. I happened to be in New York City, and I was going to the public library because that's where I was doing my best writing. I knew I had to write a chapter about friendships. And I knew it was going to be a pretty big chapter, because as we know, as women and men, friendships change over time. They evolve, they ebb and flow, some evaporate. All of a sudden, a new friend comes into your life and it blooms differently. And I'm sitting at the public library, and New York Public Library, if anyone's ever been there, it's a beautiful place. And I had my headphones on, I was listening to John Mayer, and I was sitting there at this big, long wooden table with these big, heavy chairs that you pull in. And I started to write, and I knew I had about an hour and a half, and I wanted to get through this chapter. And I really was focused on myself. I was like, nobody's getting in my way. I'm going to get this done. So I sit down, I start writing. Of course, I glance over here. I don't know if any of you can relate to that, but all of a sudden you're thinking, wow, boy, they look interesting. Okay, got to keep writing. John Mayer's playing Gravity. You know, I'm listening to it. I'm pounding out some words on the keyboard, and I can smell this aroma of garlic, kind of. And I'm getting a little distracted thinking, wow, it's actually a pretty strong odor of garlic. It almost smells a little like salami. And I'm noticing that this person sitting next to me, and at that point I was so into my music and writing, and I wasn't looking up, and I noticed that this woman in my peripheral vision was moving towards me, and the smell was getting a little bit stronger, and I thought, wow, this is really what's going on? Like, I got to get this done. You know, I have this time right now that I have to write. So what is this lady doing? She's becoming annoying. Well, sure enough, she's right next to me within a couple of inches. And I look over, and she said, excuse me, what are you doing? I said, oh, I'm writing. I took my headphones off. I set them on my neck, and I said, I'm writing a book. You know, I'm writing a book. She said, wow, you type really fast. And I said, yeah, you know, I this is what I'm doing. I have this period of time. And at that moment, you know, I could have just ignored her and kind of brushed it off. Like so often we do. We don't look up. We stay in our lane. We don't look up. And I could have just said, you know what, could you just move over a little bit? Because you're actually kind of bothering me. I can smell this garlic and you're in my space. Well, sure enough, here's this lovely woman at the New York Public Library who took the time. I needed her in my life. She needed me in my life. I found out that her name is Babs, Barbara. She goes by Babs. Her husband was a physician in New York City who recently had died. And he would go to this particular deli in New York City on his way to work. He would stop at the deli, and he would always stop at the New York Public Library, and he would always sit at this particular table in this particular chair. And here it is, right next to me at that moment. So I had a great conversation with her, and it's a conversation I never would have had. So think about those things in your own life. You know, I write about these things, about friendships that come up at unexpected times, people that come into your life that you never think would add value or anything. And so right there in that moment. So I write about that a lot in my book, Cannonball. I write a lot about friendship. I don't know if you want me to talk more about the book or where you want me to go with it. I'm happy to read an excerpt from the book if you'd like me to. I'd love to give you an overview of why I wrote Cannonball, which is, of course, to empower people to look at their life, at their circumstance, and evaluate where they are and find that courage, create it, find their cannonball moments, sit back, close their eyes, create their highlight reel, what they've accomplished, and how they can use those accomplishments to propel them forward. Each chapter is written kind of like climbing the ladder, like I talked about, specifically about climbing the ladder to a high dive. Climbing the ladder, looking at the water and thinking that it's cold and kind of holding back and being tentative, building your team, finding your friends, realizing that no matter what your age, judges are everywhere. You know what? We're being judged no matter what. I write about a 5K race that I did, that I'm not a runner. I was a swimmer, but I was never a runner. And I signed up for a 5K, immediately walked in to this running group, looked at everybody. I'm 5'4", short legs, standing next to a woman who's 5'10". Her strides would be gorgeous. She would be outrunning me. Immediately, I was like, oh man, what am I thinking? Can I really do this? I talk about that. And I talk about how I did it. And it wasn't pretty. And I was the slowest when I started, and I was the slowest when I ended, but I did it. And so there's a reflection at the end of that chapter that talks about, look at your situations. Don't judge people. Look at what you can accomplish. Look at how this can propel you forward. Look at your life experiences and how those little pieces of the puzzle, how I started in Indianapolis, writing and in journalism, has all navigated me, all those little pieces of the puzzle to this point in my journey. So that's really what it's about. So the end of each chapter has reflections for you to look at and apply to your own life. It's not 5 ways to do something or 5 ways to earn $10,000 or anything like that. It's just simple reflections for you to look at wherever you are, no matter what age you are, to propel yourself forward, to use your experiences. And that's what it's about.
I'd love to hear just a little bit of the book if you're willing to
Yeah,
read
I know. I figured you did. I just didn't know. I want to read a little excerpt that I love. It's a story about friends, and it's called Friends at Unexpected Times. It was snowing in Germany, and I didn't have any friends. It was the most snow that they'd seen in 15 years. We kept hearing that from the locals, and they were convinced that we'd brought it with us as Americans. The snow was the whitest snow I'd ever seen, and being a Midwest gal, I'd seen a lot over the years. The clouds began to move in over the Taunus Hills, and it was like they just opened right up, and the snow came out like confetti. The temperatures were fairly mild, and there wasn't much wind. It was peaceful. The Germans didn't seem to be too hypochondriacal when it came to their weather. They didn't seem to care much about Doppler radar and didn't have snowmageddon warnings running at the bottom of their TV screens like we saw in the United States. They got a surprise 15-centimeter accumulation, which is 6 inches, and they took it in stride. I'm sure the snow was expected and the meteorologists predicted it, but the language barrier prevented me from understanding what they were saying. Snow didn't paralyze them. The cobblestone strasses and vegs, which are streets and alleys, got plowed. Locals of all ages were out with their shovels and brooms. The honeymoon phase was over, and I was all in, navigating a new country, new culture, and new language for over 6 weeks. That week, it all set in for me. The snow, days of gray, the language barrier, Guten Tag, ja, 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 and Wo ist die Toilette? Just wasn't sounding appealing to me anymore. I didn't have any friends to call, and I just wanted to go home. Life throws you curveballs, doesn't it? As women, there are times we feel we have the weight of the world on our shoulders. That gray winter, dark in the afternoon was not my best time of year, and I was struggling. I didn't have any friends. I didn't know where to start looking for any. I had days where I got the kids out the door for school and crawled back into bed. The phone didn't ring because we only communicated via Skype. This crazy extroverted talk to any one person didn't have any friends, not one. My family and friends were at least 6 hours behind in time, and I didn't have a landline. The house was quiet. Everything felt like it stood still. I don't think I was depressed, but I was feeling sad and alone. We all have those days, right? I remember we were having internet connection problems, and there wasn't Netflix to binge on at that point. What do you tell yourself when you've crawled back in bed at 8 a.m. for 3 straight days? I think someone needed to come and shake my shoulders and get me out the door. I had to get moving. I walked down the steps, grabbed my jacket, hat, and gloves. There was fresh snow on the ground, and it was beautiful. A white blanket filled the park across the street, and I could see a lady walking down the street a little ways off. I recognized her coat because I'd seen her with her kids. She was pulling a sled behind her, and you know what I did? I walked out the front door, grabbed our wooden German sled, pulled it behind me, and hurried to catch up to her as she passed the house. I finally reached her when I got to the corner. She turned around and looked a little startled. "Hello, I'm Amy," I said. "I think our kids go to school together at the international school. We just moved in a few weeks ago." I have to admit, she looked at me like I had 3 heads because everything that came out of my mouth was 5 times faster than usual. She probably thought I was a crazy American, but I didn't even care what she was thinking. And you know what? She didn't care at all. We had the best time sledding. As a 41-year-old woman, I hopped on my own version of the luge, let my hair blow in the wind, and flew down the hill with my new friend. At least I'd hope we'd be friends. We definitely bonded every trip up and down the hill, not once, but 3 times. I could barely make it up the hill after my second time. The fresh air and getting moving did wonders for my disposition. I did it. I didn't have a huge friend group, but I started my friend journey that day. We all have those days where we're dragging our feet to get up and get going. It takes every ounce of energy not to binge watch Hallmark movies or Netflix, but it's best to make ourselves a priority and get outside, get out into nature. We've all had bad days. Now that we've been around for 4, 5, 6 or more decades, we definitely have had our fair share of not so good things happen. We've had our feelings hurt. We've had friendships that have evolved and evaporated, but we're in control of our lives. We're in complete control of what we can become. We have the power, the superpower. It doesn't matter if people aren't on our side or have our back. Here's the challenge. Spend a whole lot less time worrying about what other people's perceptions of how you're doing and what you're doing. Step outside of being comfortable. Take a class and pursue that passion you've always wanted to do. Book that trip, travel to that place that's been on your list. Volunteer for an organization that's meaningful to you. Finish a project you've started. Take the risk. Own the challenge. You can do it. That's one of the excerpts from my book that I like to share because, it's all about taking risks, isn't it? Putting yourself out there, getting new challenges. So I hope you enjoyed that.
I think that making new friends as an adult is one of the particular challenges, especially as a single person I'm 37, as a single person that,
right.
Yeah. So most people my age are married. A lot of them have children. So sure. As a single 37-year-old, I find myself with a lot younger people often because, that's That's who's
Right.
making friends now. Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
particular challenge of adulthood.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I talk about it a lot about looking at your friend group or your group of people that you hang out with as a circle and really challenging yourself to open that circle, to become a horseshoe, allow other people in, other perspectives, other opinions. There's so much we can learn right now in this time of uncertainty for so many of us. And, so that's what it's about.
Yeah. I'm curious about, maybe you're going to read more, but I just want to ask my question now. As a person approaching 40, I'm curious about James. The younger people I hang out with now are also married, he says. Yeah, it's true. Um, especially in the Midwest. I'm curious about if you feel that the paradigm has shifted a little, where I feel like I always used to hear that 40 was going to be, a traumatizing year or something like that. And that now it seems like everything in our lives is, we're living longer. So everything is kind of moving back. And for lack of a better phrase, do you think that 50 is the new 40?
Boy, you know what? Great question. I just think 50 is 50. I do. I look at it as that, but I do look at every little. If you would have asked me at 30 what I'd be doing at 50, I probably would have thought I was going to be old and sad and, oh, my kids will be gone or whatever. I think it's just 50 is 50, and you've got 50 years of experience under your belt. You've got 50 years of stories to share. You've got 50 years of relationships that have changed, and so much power in that, I think, to share with others. And I do think there comes some confidence with it. I really do. And that's my big goal, is for people to feel confident with what they've gone through to get to this point. And then, of course, to calibrate and recalibrate and propel that forward. I think, there's so much technology at our fingertips. Just look what we're doing now. The ability to stay in contact with each other and communicate. And, my 81-year-old father-in-law knows how to do Zoom now, which is so fantastic. So we can see, everybody. And I just think there's so much we can learn. The power of Google. I mean, I think of how many times I used Google in a day, or Alexa or whatever it is. It's amazing. So you just continue to take on new challenges. So, 40 is awesome. 40 to 50 is great. And I just think 50 to 60 is going to be even better.
That's great to hear.
It is. And it's all about, I use the term, the power in these 6 words: get up, get dressed, get going, and I write about it in the book, because I feel like there's so many times that we just want to pull the covers back over our head, just like when I read that part about Germany, and you just want to kind of make it go away, or you say, oh, when is this uncertainty going to stop? But you've got to just get up, get dressed, get going. Whether it's walking to the mailbox to get the mail and back one day, if that's something that you haven't done in a long time and it's getting you out and getting you moving, fantastic. But that's what it's about, and being healthy. And there are so many incredible things. I look at the time we have now. With my adult kids being home, I've never been able to view them through this lens. I've never seen how hard my daughter is working. She's usually in Manhattan, but she's working remotely now. It's been a real gift for me to see that, and to open up the dialogue with adult kids, that what we're calling boomerang kids now, the kids that are coming home because they're either furloughed or they're, working remotely and they're coming home. There's just so many gifts we have in this time. We have to really use it.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious to hear a little bit of your thoughts about women specifically versus men as they come into midlife. It seems to me like it's a much different dynamic, the idea that, well, women, biologically women go through a lot more as they age, or maybe just a lot more like specific to women changes that, they also have to deal with all the things that men have to deal with.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I do have on my podcast coming up in October, I'm going to be talking to some men as well, because several have reached out and said, we have different pressures too. We don't go through menopause like you do, but financial pressures, looking at their life and evaluating where they are, and do they really feel like they've accomplished enough as a father or as a son and I think women, for us, especially at 50, we just are nurturers. You know, we are more caregivers. I think that is just more of our genetic makeup. And I think that women, especially, our roles change so dramatically. When your kids leave, you know, you're just needed differently. When you're caring for your aging parents, and all of a sudden, you know, you're looking at your parents who were your heroes growing up, and now you're helping them maybe write out the bills or making sure that they're taking their medicine or all of those things. So I think that the multifaceted part of middle age and this phase of life for women is more challenging for men. James, I certainly, you know, I mean, I don't have any scientific proof, but I do believe that we just go through so many changes. And I think we struggle with that role, losing our identity. I write about a little bit, and I should have marked the page, but I write about a story when my husband yelled to me one morning when I was getting the kids ready for school, "Hey, Mom, would you grab the dry cleaning, you know, when you pick up the kids or take them to soccer practice?" And sure, you know, no problem, I'll do that. That's no problem. But I'm Amy. And it was kind of one of those stop me in my track moments where it was like, wow, where did she go? So I think women struggle with that role, those identity shifts, losing your identity a little bit more than men do.
Mm. Yeah. And partially I guess because women are asked if they have children, especially, to basically give up their identity more than men are, you know.
Right. Right.
I'm curious. I mean, I'm curious for myself what that's going to look like. I don't have kids. I don't know that I will have kids. So it's
Right.
kind of a different trajectory that,
Yeah.
you know, how that will look. Although I do find being a single person, you know, with no kids and everybody around me, especially in the Midwest, it's a different kind of discomfort, you
Right.
know. I'm fine with my choices, but it's also the judgment that you talk about. I definitely feel that for myself and
Yes.
from other people of, you know, of
Right.
being expected to be at a certain place in your life and
Yeah.
I'm not, or I didn't make those choices. So that's been something as I've aged.
Yeah.
That's a weird word, but
Yeah. And I think what was interesting, because James put on here, I could tell you plenty of things that have changed in the last few years. And I bet that is true for men as well. I mean, I do think, you know, we do go through, you look in the mirror and you look at yourself and you see gray hair, or you see more wrinkles, or you see, you know, all of those physical changes. And I know men, that affects men as well. It is interesting. I do look at this age, and I don't know, James, if you would agree, or if other women on the call would agree, that it's much more of a collaborative time than I was in my 30s. I think when I was in my 30s, I was still, you know, looking at kind of what's in it for me, trying to do everything, trying to manage everything on my own, you know, putting self-care on the back burner, but getting everything else done and climbing the ladder and doing that. Whereas now, this has been such a collaborative time for me, learning from other people. And I think you just, all of a sudden, that lens shifts a little bit, which I think has been amazing. It's what's in it, you know, together, what can we accomplish together? And I'm finding the women that I've come across in this journey, whether I interview them on the podcast or I talk about them in the book, it's such a collaborative effort around friendships too. You know, whether you have one anchor or you have a posse of friends, you know, you got to have those that just are depositing into your tank and not withdrawing. It's just a real interesting phase of life. I just feel like I feel more empowered now at this age. So for you that will be, you know, that's not even 40. I feel more empowered. I feel as though my kids view me differently, with a new type of confidence that they didn't see before. It's really interesting.
do any of the ladies that are over 40 want to talk about if they've felt either the lack of empowerment or the growth of empowerment as they approach 50 or after? No pressure. I'm just, you know, trying not to hog the conversation. And if not, maybe Amy will read a little more for us.
I do have a comment. I think just like
Yeah.
what Amy was talking about, like I'm approaching 50, so that's why I feel like your podcast is very pertinent to me, and I'm kind of excited to check out the book too. But I think I'm kind of at an age now where I don't care what other people think. I
Yeah.
can do what I can do. But whereas 10 years ago, I couldn't say that. I was like, did I do the right thing? Or did I say the right thing? Or not that I'm out trying to treating people poorly. That's not the case. I just am not so concerned about you know, I can only do what I can do. And if in my heart, I know it's a good thing, then I can't worry about what everybody else is thinking.
Yes.
Whereas I think 10, 15 years ago, it would have been a much different discussion. I would have been worried about every little thing. So
I agree with you 100%. Isn't that funny how that shifts?
yeah,
And you're allowing yourself this permission, yeah, it really is something. I feel the same way. It's kind of like, yeah, I'm going to do that. And if she doesn't like it, that's okay, because it's
yeah,
making me feel good. And yeah, I just think that's a big part of that.
yeah, it's pretty liberating.
It is. Yeah. Yeah. I had a really interesting podcast episode with Mae Musk, who is Elon Musk's mom, and she has two other children as well. The podcast is called Fearlessly Facing 50. You can Google it and find it. 50 is spelled out. But I had a really interesting conversation with her, and how she is, now at 72. She's the cover girl model. She's all of these things, but she left an abusive marriage. She walked away, with 3 young children. And really had to start from nothing and build that up. And we talked about, the conversation was interesting because it talked about, the power in this reinventing yourself. And I think as women, we constantly do that. But then getting to a point where, just like you were saying, you kind of say, you know what, I feel okay where I am. I am enough just as I am. It's one of the quotes in my book. I am enough just as I am. And yeah, pretty interesting. So I hope that you will check out the podcast. I interview some pretty interesting people, not just celebrities, but I share stories of incredible men and women, and just how they've taken on these challenges of midlife around health or around anything, because it is so multifaceted. And I also talk to experts on these topics and really open the dialogue about things that a lot of times we considered were a little taboo.
Excuse me.
James.
James, thanks for listening to all of this about midlife women, right? And beyond.
Well, I wanted to make a comment. So far, what I've heard about your book, I haven't had a chance to read it, Amy, but it's very interesting, and I do think that it speaks to like all ages, because I'm Anne's age. I'm 37.
Okay.
We actually kind of grew up together for a little while. We went to the same church before she came to her senses and got out of Indiana for a while. But like, I think that self exploration that you hit at 50 can be done at any time, because I grew up with the idea that as long as I work hard and I do what people tell me to do, I will achieve things.
Right.
I went for that for 30 years and didn't get anywhere. Like, I'd work really hard at a job, and then a manager wouldn't like me and I'd get fired, or I'd work really, really hard at a job and be left doing the same job because I was so good at it and
Right.
never got anywhere. And just this past year, maybe these last 2 years, I've started self-examining myself with therapy and things like that. And
Yeah.
and it is interesting, like Anne's talking about having friends that, like, my friends that are, I don't think I have any friends that are like my age. I have friends that are a little bit younger, that are 10 years younger, or 10, 20 years older.
Really?
And
Yeah.
all of them are married. I
Yeah.
don't think I have a single friend. But like, dating at this time in my life was very interesting, the kind of people that you meet and talk to.
Absolutely.
But it's like, it's realizing that it's like, I kind of need to take ownership and choose my direction and find what I want to do.
Right.
I did have one question.
Yeah.
When you got married and you found out that your husband had this position that was going to require you guys to move every 2 or 3 years, how much of that was a struggle? Like, was there an argument because you were probably, I mean, you had to sacrifice like your career to do that, right?
Yes. Absolutely. Great question. There were a lot of times like that where I really, because then I was getting into the broadcasting world, and we're living in Denver, and all of a sudden we're there, and we're going to be moving to Bloomington, Illinois, or we're going to be moving, and so it was very hard for me to root in. And you need to do that. So we had many a discussion about it. And you know what? I have no regrets because I really don't when I look at my life, but I do look at some points where I feel like, wow, I probably could have taken a little bit of different, we probably could have taken a different trajectory too. I maybe didn't need to say yes to every single thing, every single time, but I learned from every experience, but it certainly did come with challenge. And I think that's why at this point in my marriage and in our life, it was my time. And I've been that, what I call in the book, traveling spouse. I took that on. I still was freelance writing. I was doing all sorts of things like that. And of course, immersed in my kids' life. But I think at this point, he knew from me that, wow, she has sacrificed a lot. She has done a lot for me. Let's switch that. And so when I was writing this book, which has taken over a year to write, he made a lot of frozen pizza, a lot of hot dogs, a lot of mac and cheese, because I was, that's just the way it was. So there has been some give and take, but yeah, it did certainly come with a lot of challenging, courageous conversations along there.
Your husband does know he's allowed to cook, right? Like
exactly. Exactly. We've had a lot of tombstone pizzas, a lot of, yeah. All
you
good.
can ask Ann. The reason it was dark the first half of this video is because I was eating my dinner, because I cook almost every night here.
Oh dear, yeah.
Three other adults.
Right.
So, yeah, he's always cooking at Lit Society. He's got it on in the background and he's walking around cooking.
It's dinner time. I got to feed the people.
Yeah, right. No, I really, I love this, and I love to hear from other people and their perspectives and the challenges. And I do think men have similar challenges. They really do. They really do. It's been interesting. So it was really interesting. I had a guy on my podcast. I went to right before COVID happened in February, I was with about, 5,000 different podcasters, authors, that type of thing at a convention. And one of the guys that was speaking, one of the keynote speakers, I just happened upon because I do talk to anybody. I went up to him and I was talking to him about his background. He's young, he's early 30s at best. And we got to talking, and he's an entrepreneur, and he got a business podcast, and really our missions didn't really align. But yet as we started talking, he said, wow, I got to tell my mom about your podcast. And I said, interesting. You've mentioned your mom like 3 or 4 times in this conversation. So he came on my podcast for a Mother's Day episode and talked specifically about nurturing that relationship with your adult kids. I thought, wow, how cool is that? So, it's all of these different conversations you have with people, or like the people I'm meeting tonight with this, with this group. It's just amazing how things happen and how connections are made. There's a lot of power in that.
Anybody else have any other questions, or do you want to read another little section? What do you think? We can do whatever.
Gosh, yeah. Well, it's up to you guys. I can read a little part about. I have so many of my favorite parts in here. I'm going to save that one for you guys to read in the book, because and the book is a lot of my personal stories. Along with, was there another question? Here we go. Planning for a positive outcome. I think this is interesting for men and women to hear, because we are worriers in general. If we identify what we're worrying about, we can actually prepare for the outcome. Sounds simple, right? That old saying, if it were easy, everyone would be doing it, doesn't apply here. Here's the challenge. Let's focus on what you're worrying about. An easy way to begin is by writing everything down: your goals, your grocery list, and of course, your worry list. Are you worrying about an upcoming presentation you have to give in front of an audience? Are you worrying about your adult child and the choices they're making? Are you worried about your health? Are you worried about your aging parents? Are you worrying about your marriage? Now let's think about how we can take control over some of those things that we worry about. You can't pay someone to do the presentation for you, but allowing yourself time to practice and prepare will help with that anxiety. You can't follow your kid around the rest of their life. You don't know who their friends are and what they'll do every day, but allowing yourself to have a weekly phone date with your son or daughter and talking to them about their life may help lessen your uncertainty. You can't control the role genetics play in your health, but allowing yourself to control the choices you make around your diet and exercise, and becoming proactive about making appropriate appointments throughout the year for checkups can help with that. You can't turn back time and have that would have, could have, should have attitude about your mom and dad. They're getting older, and so are you, by the way. You can't worry about them falling every day or not taking their medicine, but allowing yourself to check in with them more often or having conversations with your siblings about how they're doing will help lessen that worry. You'll never be able to recreate that first kiss or that tingling feeling all over when you held hands, but allowing yourself to take the chance to listen to each other and not talk over each other, or simply allowing yourself a date night every so often will help you rekindle that spark that was once there. It's truly about planning for a positive outcome, taking the risk, and simply allowing yourself, giving yourself permission to use your energy in a positive way. And that's the reward. This chapter is all about risk and reward. I talk about my dad coming out. My dad suffered from Parkinson's, and he came out to Germany to visit, and it was his last visit to Germany, and just how there was much risk involved in that, and I was worried about it, but the reward was, him coming and spending time, and so I shared that story. So I hope you enjoyed that.
How's everybody doing? If anybody wants to order the book, you can order it through Indy Reads. We're, trying to set up some sort of a pre-order for our virtual literary society, but, there's just a lot of things going on right now.
That's true. A lot of things going on.
Progress is slow and steady.
And I would love to give away a book. I'd love to give away an autograph book to somebody. I don't know if you'd be up for that or not, but maybe if somebody, I call them Cannonball moments or Cannonball with confidence. If somebody is brave enough to share a little Cannonball moment, maybe if you'd be willing to do that, or if you want to do it on Instagram. Yeah, is that too much?
No, do it. I want somebody to do it.
I was going to say, you do that, and I'm happy to send a book to you, or maybe, I don't know if you do much on Instagram. I know you're active on there. You can always share something there and we'll pick a winner, but I would love to send a book out to somebody that would love to share something that they would call their Cannonball moment.
And put like a hashtag or something on Instagram, or do it here?
Yeah, you can do Cannonball with confidence.
Cannonball with confidence.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very cool.
Anybody want to share a cannonball? I feel like my life is a series of cannonballs. I'm a pretty, much to my poor mother's chagrin, I'm a pretty risk-taking type of person.
There you go. Yeah. Love it.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes the challenge, I think, is to be confident in the aftermath, even if it doesn't work out.
Right.
Even if you dive and have to go to the chiropractor the next day, you still have to be like, well, I still did it.
Yeah.
I'm still proud of myself.
Yes. You have to be proud of yourself. That's the whole thing behind a highlight reel. We don't sit and savor those things. We don't take the time to look back at what we've accomplished, because we're so quick to go to the next thing that we don't look back and say, wow, I did do that, or that's incredible. It's creating your own highlight reel and then using that to propel you forward. And I think that's so powerful.
What are some ways that that you have found or heard from people that you've talked to about how women can put themselves first, like as they are approaching midlife, as they're maybe their kids are moving out, or they're struggling with finding some sort of identity after kids, or maybe they're retiring, how are some ways that you found that women are able to reclaim?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think it's all about, finding your passion, what you really love to do. If there was an organization that, an interesting story, I had a 53-year-old woman that has been following me in my journey and that type of thing. And now her kids have all left the nest, and she had never gotten her college degree. And she decided to go back, and with online classes, she said, you know what, I'm going to do it. and she's doing it. She's getting her degree. I think, it's just about, and I say that highlight reel a lot because I even make my kids do it at times, even though they're not 50, but you just kind of look at where your strengths are. Or, another challenge I have for people is really looking at your friend group. And if you have that anchor or that special friend that knows you inside and out on good days and on not so good days, go up to them and say, why are you investing so much time in this friendship? Why am I adding value to you? It's awkward. It's like, wow, I did this with my friend Kim, who I've been friends for years. And I challenged her. I said, what do I do really well that's really encouraging you? How am I adding value to you? And you start having those courageous conversations about it. And all of a sudden you sit back and say, wow, I'm really good at planning, or I'm really good at communicating. And then that might translate to something else that you can do that you didn't realize. We don't realize where we add value sometimes. So asking those questions, and all of a sudden it can uncover this treasure of, wow, maybe I should volunteer for that organization, or maybe I should start this class, or, all that kind of thing. And I do challenge women too, because I know I was one of them that, you pulled into a new yoga class, or you're trying a new exercise class and at the Y, and you get to the parking lot and you're like, oh man, what am I doing? You just want to exit stage left and go to Starbucks and not go in because you're nervous. You're feeling like you want to walk in and see somebody that but if you don't do that, you can't not look at those opportunities. That's why midlife shouldn't be a crisis. It's an opportunity to grow, to learn, to continue to challenge yourself.
Well, thank you so much, Amy. Unless anybody else has anything they want to share or ask or contribute. Next week, Bryce is going to lead. It's just like our normal Lit Society is we all just kind of come on and talk about what we're reading. One person will lead sort of a discussion about their book, but he's talking about Are Prisons Obsolete by Angela Davis. And I'm very interested to hear what he has to say about that.
I might have to join that one.
Yeah, you can find Amy at her website. You can find her on social media. Are you on Instagram? Is it Fearlessly Facing 50 also?
Yeah, fearlessly.facing.50. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, I would love that. And I have a Facebook page and a group, Fearlessly Facing 50, everything there. And I love to correspond with people. You can send me an email, amy@fearlesslyfacing50.com. I love it because it feeds me. And I think that's one thing that with writing this book and just getting feedback from people that have read it, that have said, wow, this really encouraged me in this way. I love to hear that. And certainly I really do. I do give myself 48 hours now to respond. I used to do the 24-hour rule. Like, I'll get back to you in 24 hours, but now I'm giving myself that gift of, okay, it might take me 48, but I'll get back to you.
Yeah. 24 hours is it's not long.
Yeah, not long. I know. But I really enjoyed this. I hope that I added value to you, because I know time is precious. So I thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Amy. Stay well, stay healthy.
Yes.
With all of your endeavors. We'll be watching. If anyone wants to order, you can call me.
Thank you.
Or you can probably order from your website too, huh?
You can order from the website and you can go on Amazon. Yep. Cannonball, Fearlessly Facing Midlife and Beyond.
Thanks.
And let me know when you share your Cannonball moments, because I'll send one out.
I know. Oh yeah. Somebody get that book.
Thank you very much, Amy.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.
Everybody. Thank you for coming.
Yep.
Thank you, Amy.